No, it's
Please
okay.
don't make me do it. I don't want to do it.
These actors and actresses clearly understood the assignment when it came to creating the perfect voice for these iconic characters. From unusual inspiration, replicating accents, or sound engineering.
You're Banner's friend.
We all know that Tom Hardy plays Eddie Brock in the Venom films, and that it is his voice behind the symbiotic Venom, but what fans may not know is that it's more than just Hardy behind the voice of the anti-hero. Hardy claims that the voice he made for Venom was a combination of Redman, Busta Rhymes, and James Brown. That's where the sound department came in. They worked relentlessly to trigger the voice. I'd have to lay down the vocals for Venom in the morning, and then play Eddie opposite in my earpiece. The late voice actor Brad Venable also contributed to the voice of Venom in the first film. Gollum is easily one of the most iconic characters in the entire Lord of the Rings franchise, and it was his work as the demented Gollum that made him a go-to actor for characters that required motion capture. Even from interviews, Serkis typically speaks with a lot of elegance, which makes his Gollum voice all the more surprising. Serkis found inspiration for the voice in his own home.
I basically impersonate my cat.
Particularly, Serkis based the voice around how his cat would hack up hairballs.
You don't have any friends.
Many were surprised when it was announced that American actress Kristen Stewart would play the highly coveted role of Princess Diana in the film Spencer. Stewart ended up working with the same dialect coach that The Crown star Emma Corrin worked with when she played Diana in the 4th season of The Crown. The accent is intimidating as all hell because people know that voice, and it's so distinct and particular. Stewart ended up wowing critics with her Diana voice, which likely lifted a giant burden of stress off her shoulders.
Will they kill me, do you think?
There was quite a bit of hype surrounding Margot Robbie when she was cast as the fan-favorite DC character Harley Quinn in Suicide Squad. She's got a very high-pitched voice, which, for the lighthearted stuff, the crazy stuff works really well, but when it's a pretty raw, emotional scene, you lose the gravity when you're speaking in such a high voice. Robbie's voice drew inspiration from multiple places, combining a Brooklyn tinge with Lorraine Bracco's performance in Goodfellas, and lastly, Harley's voice in Batman the Animated Series.
I never said that.
To create his Batman voice, Robert Pattinson didn't necessarily look at the work of the other Batmen for inspiration, but instead he drew inspiration from his The Lighthouse co-star Willem Dafoe, who used a pirate-like accent. Willem's voice in The Lighthouse was quite inspiring for it. To be honest, it is pretty similar, the voice I'm gonna do, to Willem's.
I'm vengeance.
While Johnny Depp's interpretation of Willy Wonka in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory may be polarizing to both fans of Depp as well as fans of Gene Wilder, there's no doubt that Depp definitely knew what he was doing. Depp's Wonka voice came to him while he was playing with his then 6-year-old daughter, Lily Rose. Depp would often practice different voices while playing with Barbies with his young daughter, and oftentimes his daughter would tell him to stop. Then we were playing one day, and I started to use my Wonka voice, and she kinda lit up a bit, like, where's that coming from? And I thought, all right, I think I'm on the right track here.
I never expected to have so much in common.
Thor Ragnarok presented a new opportunity while playing the Hulk for actor Mark Ruffalo. While in previous live-action incarnations, Lou Ferrigno provided his vocals to the Hulk. Ruffalo, for the first time, had to do a voice for the Hulk.
Hulk like fire.
The sound technicians would later on make Ruffalo's Hulk voice sound a bit more monstrous. Ruffalo still wanted to give credit to his predecessor, though. That's who I watched playing the Hulk growing up. It's definitely a nod to you, Lou. You influenced that.
Doggo. Hulk's dead.
Christian Bale's growling and gravelly Batman voice in the Dark Knight trilogy has since become synonymous with the character. The voice came to Bale, almost by coincidence, during his audition for the role. He had to wear Val Kilmer's Batsuit from Batman Forever, which initially made him feel ridiculous, but then gave him an idea. If you look at the history of the guy, and the pain he went through, I can't do this in a normal voice. I have to become a beast in order to sell this to myself. When Bale showed off his voice to his wife, hoping to impress her, she laughed, suggesting that the audition was a failure. Luckily, it wasn't, and the rest was history.
You made a serious mistake.
Rami Malek had a lot of weight on his shoulders when stepping into the role of late Queen frontman Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. Mercury had such a distinct singing voice that it was obvious Malek, regardless of how talented of an actor he is, couldn't pull off the voice alone. Malek's Mercury's singing voice was actually a mix of his own, Mercury's vocals, and Mark Martel, who is known for his covers of classic Queen songs. This ultimately paid off in the end as Malek went on to win Best Actor at the Oscars for the role.
Yes, of course.
Tom Hardy's interpretation of the classic Batman villain Bane in The Dark Knight Rises is quite different from how he's portrayed in the comics, which meant that Hardy had to create a new kind of voice for the villain. Because of the villain's Latino origins, Hardy looked into famous Latin figures and stumbled across Bartley Gorman, a bare-knuckle fighter who was known as the King of the Gypsies. Hardy showed director Christopher Nolan and said that either they do a typical monotone villain voice or try out the accent, even if they end up regretting it. Nolan ultimately agreed to let Hardy try out the accent, and it was a success.
Gotham is yours!
Until recently, most associated Daniel Craig with the British suave he pulls off while playing Bond, but with his role as Benoit Blanc in Knives Out, fans saw a whole different side of Craig as he spoke in a thick Southern accent. The idea of having a Southern accent came to Craig while reading the script after talking to director Rian Johnson. For inspiration for the voice, Craig looked at Civil War historian Shelby Foote, whose voice Craig heard in a Ken Burns documentary. We were talking about, we want it to be sonorous and honeyed. We didn't want it to be twangy and annoying, so Shelby Foote came to mind.
A donut hole in a donut's hole.
Lupita Nyong'o gave a powerhouse dual performance in Jordan Peele's Us, and audiences were taken aback by the voice she used when portraying Red, the supposed tethered version of her character. I was inspired by the condition spasmodic dysphonia, which is a condition that comes about from trauma, sometimes emotional, sometimes physical. It creates this spasming in your vocal cords that leads to an irregular flow of air.
He had to eat rabbit, raw and bloody.
Samuel L. Jackson's villainous Valentine in Kingsman: The Secret Service notably has a lisp, something we don't really see from Jackson. I did the lisp because people tend to dismiss people who have defects in interesting sorts of ways, and especially speech defects. Jackson was not only inspired by the lisp he had in his childhood, but also from TV host Jonathan Ross, who ironically is the husband of the film's screenwriter Jane Goldman.
You know what this is like?
Kate Winslet impressed audiences with her accurate Eastern Pennsylvanian accent when playing Mare Sheehan in Mare of Easttown. It is absolutely up there amongst the top 2 hardest dialects I've ever done. Winslet said that she struggled the most with getting the O's right, as well as how the people of Eastern Pennsylvania often smoosh their words together. So it's not like a voice that you hear the actor doing, it just evaporates.
Everyone's having dinner over there because he's a big cook all of a sudden and no one's coming to my ceremony. Is that it?
Saoirse Ronan is one of the most gifted young actresses in Hollywood, and her title role in Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird is perhaps one of her most beloved roles. Ronan struggled a bit with nailing down her character's Sacramento accent, but after guidance from Gerwig, Ronan was able to get it down. It's a lot sort of flatter and more laid back, and the fact that it's sunnier for longer in the year and it's warmer and things like that, that probably has an effect on how these people sound.
I like your band. With Jonah Ruiz.
Even the smallest accents can be tricky to pull off, and these actors and actresses were able to defy the odds and give us some pretty seamless accents. What's your favorite voice in a movie?